Hey guys, today's video is another classic. Steven Seagal, his second movie. He had a 3-picture deal with Warner Brothers. This is his second one. He starred with at the time, his real-life wife, Kelly LeBrock. They actually talked about doing a movie together all the way back in 1986. This came out in 1990, so there's an interesting article from LA Times I'll talk about, as well as other trivia. Overall retrospective. So if you're a Seagal fan, you'll probably love the hell out of this. If you're not a Seagal fan, you're probably not here watching, or you just love to hate it, so maybe you will watch. Comment either way. Let's get some engagement going on this channel. By the way, me and this movie go way back. You'll see it's the DVD, so obviously I got it a long time ago. I'd at least probably get the Blu-ray these days, but even that's old school. You know, most people probably just stream it or something, but I like old school media just like I like old school Seagal. So this is classic 90s action. Still holds up to this day. I watched it in 2020, not too long ago. Anybody who hasn't seen it, it's worth a watch. Anyone who has seen it, it's worth revisiting. So in today's video, let's talk about why.
Steven Seagal is Mason Storm, a cop working undercover. Until his cover was blown.
So are we really surprised his cover was blown? It's got a video camera that's about 2 feet long. Oh, I would like to point out the technology wasn't that bad in 1990. The film actually initially takes place 7 years prior, 1983, and yeah, the technology was that bad. I think we all need to just step back for a moment and be grateful. The amount of technology you can just house in your pocket these days is pretty much what you had to have a van or an RV to put all that tech in back in the day. Speaking of back in the day, this film took place during Seagal's golden era, 1988 to 1991. It was the second film, as I mentioned earlier in the intro, from Warner Brothers of the 3-picture deal. The third film was actually from Fox, and we'll talk about that in the next video. But as far as Hard to Kill goes, this was pretty important in the realm of Seagology. For instance, this was the debut of his now infamous ponytail, something that would become synonymous with his image overall. In fact, when you think about Steven Seagal, you think about his ponytail, just like when you think of Arnold, you think of his muscles. Same thing. Hard to Kill would also be the film to debut the word "is" in his credit. For example, Steven Seagal is hard to kill. You'll see that used in a lot of his future films. Another interesting tidbit about Hard to Kill is the love interest in the film is actually played by his real-life wife at the time, Kelly LeBrock. You probably all know her from Weird Science. She was a model, a London model, and they actually met in Japan when he was also her bodyguard at one point. Now, there's an interesting article in the Los Angeles Times from 1986. So I'm going to link in the description of this video. It talks about the man, the martial artist, his upbringing in Japan, learning the ways, and how there's really no great Western martial arts movies. It talks about the fight choreography he's done in town on some films, also kind of building him up to be the next big martial arts movie star. Now, the article was written before his first film ever came out in 1988, which was Above the Law. Hard to Kill, that came out 2 years later in 1990, so this article came out 4 years prior to that. And they kind of allude to the possibility of Seagal and LeBrock starring in the same movie. Seagal said, "A lot of people were telling me that they're very excited to get us together because of the way we look together and our chemistry." He goes on to say, "In the last year, Kelly and I have been offered the moon, but we've been waiting for the right stuff. We want to do good film, good art." Now, whether or not you consider Hard to Kill a good film or even good art, it's definitely entertaining. I'd say it's a good film for what it is. It's a revenge story. It's similar to Kill Bill. It's essentially the story of a victim coming out of a coma, regaining strength, training, then tracking down those responsible and killing them. That's always a lot of fun. How can you not root for the man? I think that's what made Seagal movies likable from a lot of audience members. His character is put in a situation, he wants to right the wrongs. In this particular film, his family's murdered, including, well, his child's not murdered, but as far as he knows, the kid was murdered with the wife. Who could not put themselves in that shoes and just want to get vengeance, want to get justice through any means possible, through their own means, not through the court legal system. That just wouldn't be nearly as satisfying in real life or on screen. But speaking of real life, you should probably go that route. The legal route, that is, through the legal court systems. Let the cops do their job. You're not an Aikido master, plus there's other legal implications involved, so yeah, let the cops do their job. Speaking about the coma, the working title for this film was called 7-Year Storm. He was in a coma for 7 years, and there's been a storm brewing for that amount of time. That would have been a pretty awesome title, but Hard to Kill is equally awesome. Now, interestingly, if they actually did go with 7-Year Storm, it does continue the tradition of the 3-word title that all of his golden era films had. 3 words, simple, straight to the point. Some interesting health notes. Waking up from a 7-year coma, by the way, wouldn't happen nearly as fast as it does in Hard to Kill, but of course that would make for a pretty boring movie. The transition would actually take months. In Hard to Kill, the way Storm, Seagal's character, heals himself, he uses a traditional Chinese medicine technique called moxibustion. Now, moxibustion is a form of heat therapy in which dried plant materials called moxa are burned on or very near the surface of the skin. The intention is to warm and invigorate the flow of qi in the body and dispel certain pathogenic influences. Either way, Seagal makes it look pretty badass on screen. It's actually one of the more common motifs you'll find in Seagal films, whether it be Eastern philosophy, medicine, etc. Now, as far as the script goes, Seagal's second outing rearranges the politics and action formula of his previous effort, Above the Law, to create a little bit more of a mythic hero's journey type film. The story opens on April 11th of 1983. The only reason why they don't necessarily say it's April 11th, but they do allude to it being Oscars night. So we know it's April 11th of 1983. It's very specific. And they do mention the Oscars a few times.
So, how come you're not watching the Oscars tonight?
The Oscars?
Yeah, the Oscars.
I hate the Oscars.
You're not having a good time, huh?
I mean, who needs the goddamn movies anyway? I got a show in here every single night.
Yeah?
Then you got horror, sex, freaks, violence. And I don't gotta pay no $4 either.
In 1983, we've learned that Gandhi had dominated the Oscars that night, winning 8 awards, including Best Picture, Director, and Actor. So why is this important? What does this have to do with anything? Well, setting the opening scenes on Oscar night 1983 does add a sort of realistic texture to the film, putting the characters into the same historical and cultural type context that we live in. But outside of that, there's also a little subtext here. Verne, in his book Seagology, really breaks it down. He doesn't think it's a stretch to guess that the writer chose Oscar night 1983 as a way of comparing Mason Storm's, Seagal's character, violent retribution to Gandhi's nonviolent protest. Mason never himself finds out about Gandhi winning the Oscars, but his friend at the police station does and cheers for Ben Kingsley's win shortly before he is shot dead. This seems to indicate that pacifism can only go so far, that we are dealing with violent people and at some point you need to decide that enough is enough and bring violent retribution to the enemies the way Mason Storm does. Now, whether or not the screenwriter actually did intend that, or if we're just looking a little deeper than we should be, there's a lot of action films where the level of subtext is pretty sophisticated that we may not necessarily notice, possibly on a subconscious level, but usually it takes somebody to point out and for you to connect the pieces, and it just makes the film that much more fascinating to think about, even though it's really just a popcorn action flick in this case.
Looks like you won the Oscar tonight, Storm. Coming up.
Now, although scripts go through many rewrites, and there's usually a final draft come production time, a lot of times a film actually veers away from the final script, and that might be due to the editing post-production, where they shot several scenes and decided to use something else. Editing is, after all, considered the final rewrite. Other times a scene might have just been too hard to shoot. So Verne points out in his book, Seagology, one of the spectacular action moments in the script that I'm sure turned out to be too hard to shoot was one where Storm runs across a row of parked cars, leaps through the air like a night eagle, setting what looks like a new world record in the long jump, and cracks the guy's neck, killing him instantly. Now, the best part of this awesome move is that it would have been the first time his son saw him in 7 years. It would have made quite an entrance. Here's how the actual scene plays out.
Sonny! He's going to the alley!
I actually really prefer the scene in the film. You get a much more satisfying fight scene out of it, as opposed to just an instant kill.
She's still a loser.
I always found that line to be a little odd. How does getting ambushed in the middle of the night by an armed gang and your wife get murdered make you a loser? Hey Google, give me the definition of a loser.
Here's the definition of loser. A person or thing that loses or has lost something.
Okay, I take it back. I guess that guy's right. But he's still kind of a scumbag.
The devil!
And apparently the devil. Love the symbolism there. So here's a sweet bonding moment with his family here. You'll find several of these kind of moments in early Seagal films. And another thing you'll find in Seagal films is even though he's a cop, he's sort of a rebel within the system. So you'll see him running from cops here. There's also in his first film, Above the Law, there's a similar moment as well. And there's a good reason that he did that in Above the Law, because he did just throw a man through somebody's glass window. Speaking of breaking glass and windows, that's another pretty common occurrence in Seagal movies. Here in Hard to Kill, for example, you'll see these guys thrown through shelves of bottles in a liquor store. You'll see this guy's head through a Chinese cabinet. And then these guys kick through the windows of a hotel lobby. If there's one thing that all this broken glass has in common, it's pretty damn entertaining.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
I want to reference the book Seagology one more time, because there are two pieces of pure Seagalian dialogue that seem like Seagal himself could have improvised them. The bit about his past as a white boy raised in the Orient, and also the classic superior attitude speech. Verne mentions in that book Psychology that he was happy to find that neither of these were in the script, which supports his theory that Seagal makes this kind of stuff up on the fly when the cameras are rolling. And I believe what Verne really likes and respects about this is, one, they're two pretty badass speeches, and two, it just gives you more insight into the man himself, Seagal, man, myth, legend. With that said, I do want to play those two clips here, because these are some of my favorite parts of the film.
My father was a missionary. I was raised in the Orient. And as a young white boy over there, I needed to learn how to fight, as you can imagine. I remember I went to my first martial arts teacher, and he says, "So why do you come to me?" And I say, to learn how to fight. And he says, "Oh, so you want to hurt people? But do you want to be great?" I say, "Yeah, I want to be great." He says, "Then first learn how to heal people to be great. To hurt people is easy."
What if they found you?
No, you did the right thing. Then wasn't the time. Now's the time. We're outgunned and undermanned, but you know something? We're gonna win. And I'll tell you why. Superior attitude, superior state of mind. We'll get him, buddy. Believe me. Every fucking one of them.
Let me know what you guys think about those scenes in the movie, by the way, in the comments below. So with any great action movie, especially of the 80s or 90s era, there's usually going to be some memorable one-liners, and this one in particular comes to mind.
Money now and a lot more when I get in that office. I can take that to the bank.
I'm gonna take you to the bank, Senator Trent. To the blood bank.
I just love how the script describes this, by the way. Storm's vengeance look. I think Seagal nailed that. Oh, and here's another gem of a one-liner.
That's for my wife. Fuck you and die.
Now, in an ironic twist of fate, the main villain in the film, Senator Trent, is enjoying a lovely evening in the hot tub with his hot date. They had plans to go to the ballet. Now, a lot of guys in general do whatever they can to get out of going to the ballet. In this case, Senator Trent should have just went, because his fate staying at home was much, much worse.
Listen, we're not gonna make the ballet tonight. Take a hike.
Get lost!
Is a pretty worthless adversary to Steven Seagal. The actor himself is not William Sadler. In fact, the same year this came out, he was the main villain in Die Hard 2. He was actually a karate master in that, an international terrorist. He put up a pretty damn good fight against Bruce Willis, a martial arts master not unlike Seagal himself. At least the character was. But I guess overall, it would have been a little bit cheesy if the Senator was this karate master that put up a fight against Seagal. The climax to Hard to Kill is rather interesting. Seagal sneaks into Senator Trent's mansion and dispatches his goons, and it becomes rather sadistic. He's basically writing threatening messages on the walls. He's stalking the police captain as well as Senator Trent.
Vernon! Oh, Vernon!
And overall, he's just toying with them.
Let's try and...
Before, of course, breaking bones and stuffing shotguns in mouths. Usually in an action film, the main villain that the hero fights at the end puts up the biggest fight. But like I mentioned, it doesn't really make sense for the Senator to be the type of opponent that he was, the type of adversary that he was in Die Hard 2, even though it's the same actor. And that actor, William Sadler, can certainly pull off that role. It just wouldn't make sense in this instance. So anyway, that's the video, guys. Steven Seagal, the Eastwood Bronson Norris of the 90s. A pleasant surprise. Not my words, by the way. That was actually from USA Today. But anyway, thanks for watching. Please subscribe. Hope to see you guys next time for more Seagal, and in the future we're going to do a lot of Van Damme movies as well, breaking them down.